Honestly, Wolfman Jack is the unsung hero of this movie. How's it going, fellas and files? This is Dominic from Film Overload, the channel where we talk about movies, pop culture, and everything in between. And today I have another retro review, and I will be reviewing the movie that practically put George Lucas on the map for Hollywood, and that is his coming-of-age drama, American Graffiti. Now, I saw this film a few years ago, but completely forgot about the plot. So I decided to rewatch this film, and honestly, this movie is a very, very solid coming-of-age movie. Once again, a very young George Lucas just wanted to make films after he graduated from USC, and this movie, I think, was a very good movie to kind of, get his name out there. I know about THX 1138, but this is really the movie that really, I think, put him in the public eye for not only himself, but for the industry as well. He really put his name out there with this movie, and for good reasons. A very simple story about a few high schoolers who just graduated and they want to spend one final night together cruising down the strip with their buddies before they head off to college. And I think this movie really encapsulates the coming of age genre as a whole. I really believe that this movie was kind of like a foundation for the genre itself. I mean, just 10 years or 20 years later, we got movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Dazed and Confused, and this movie really felt like the foundation or like the building ground for that type of movie. And George tells a very, very interesting story that weaves a bunch of characters together, and I really enjoyed it. In my opinion, it's incredibly easy to write teenagers, and I think George did a really great job with writing these teenage characters. I think that he gave them a lot of heart and a lot of spirit and a lot of drive, no pun intended. But they just really worked well. The characters worked great. The story I thought was really solid, and through George's writing, you really get this really intimate, very personal, almost look at what it was like to be a teenager in this point in time. So George really wrote a solid script which let his very young cast do most of the heavy lifting. And speaking of that young cast, let's talk about them. I mean, this cast is just really, really loaded with some really good, talented actors. I mean, there was Richard Dreyfuss in this movie, Ron Howard, a very young Ron Howard, Paul LeMat, Charles Martin Smith, Candy Clark, Mackenzie Phillips, Cindy Williams, and the list goes on and on. And I thought that the youth was really, really good in this movie. They completely embody the characters that they play because of how young they were at the time of making the film also, which really benefited not only their performances, but the characters as well. And I thought through the youth of this movie, it really kind of takes you into the story and it really makes you understand what these kids are going through their lives in the movie world. So I thought that the cast was really, really good in this movie. Also, shout outs to Harrison Ford in this movie. I completely forgot he was in this movie, but he was a total kick-ass, I thought, in this movie for the brief time that we see him in. The pacing was good. I wouldn't say great, but good. There's a couple of moments in the movie where it does seem to kind of slow down just a little bit, but that didn't take away my overall experience with the story. And I think it's because the pacing kind of gets pushed to the side because of the really, really solid camera work in this movie. I loved the camera work. I thought it was very well done. I loved the flashy editing and the production design and just everything to make it look like the 1960s. I really did enjoy that as well. Circling back around to Wolfman Jack, this soundtrack is a bona fide banger. I kid you not. This soundtrack in this movie is incredible, and it plays throughout the entirety of the movie, and it really gives the movie that charm. The soundtrack in this is just ridiculous. The names and the songs that are on this soundtrack is totally amazing. I would argue this is one of the greatest movie soundtracks that isn't orchestrated of all time. And I really mean that. This soundtrack is loaded, and I absolutely loved the music in this movie. Overall, American Graffiti is a very solid coming-of-age film. A film that really kickstarted George Lucas's career and would eventually lead him to make Star Wars. But American Graffiti isn't like a lot of coming-of-age films. Sure, it may have been the foundation for films like Dazed and Confused or Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but it really has its own unique voice. And I think it's because of how personal George Lucas made this film. And to me, that's what separates American Graffiti from the other coming-of-age films. It just felt super personal, which I really enjoyed throughout the entirety of the film. So that's it. And guys, if you like this review and want to see more forms of content like it, like all the kids in the movie, cruise down the street and pick up that like button. Also, hit the subscribe button while you're at it and turn on the post notifications so that you guys can get notified every single time I post a video. You can follow me on Letterboxd, which is right here. I post all of my movie reviews on Letterboxd as it helps me keep track of movies that I have watched, movies that I haven't watched, and movies that I will watch. And I think you guys would benefit greatly from this app and this website if you are indeed lovers of cinema like myself. As always, guys, happy movie watching. Take care.